We're in this journey with Jesus, and it's a chronological journey that we are tracing through the Gospels, trying to take a brisk walk, but I kept getting focused on some of the incredible details that happen. We're in the second year of Jesus' ministry. In fact, it's getting to that point where his popularity has grown and is growing. The crowds are increasing. We're about to see in a couple of weeks' time how he feeds thousands of people. There is a growing sense amongst the crowds and amongst the people that this could be the Messiah, the king that would free them from the Roman oppression. They wanted a physical king. They wanted a king then that day to ride on a horse to overthrow a physical Roman government. And Jesus, knowing that, seems to get away from the crowds. He knows that he's not to be an earthly king, but because he is an eternal king. He is the King of Kings. And so we're in this kind of place. He's preaching about the kingdom of God. It's not of this world. It's an upside down kingdom. Power from heaven. We've called this time down to earth. Power from heaven comes down to earth. Miracles are happening. People are receiving their sight. People that could not speak are speaking. Demons are coming out. There is an increase of the miraculous, the supernatural. It's all happening. And then we get to this next story, this next moment that we find in Mark chapter 6. And in Mark chapter 6, reading from the NLT, I think it is. I prepared it in the ESV, but that's why I'm just having to do it. I think it'll come up on the screen. And it says, Jesus left that part of the country that was his, where he had moved to by the lake, and returned with his disciples, say his disciples, to Nazareth, his hometown. He went back to his hometown. Now, as we may have remembered a couple of weeks back or a month or two ago, is that he had been in Nazareth. It was his hometown. He'd gone into the synagogue and preached, and they hated him. In fact, they wanted to kill him. They took him to the edge of a cliff to throw him over. He got out of that, and he went to go and live in Capernaum. This is 6, 8, 9 months, maybe 10 months later, he has to go back to his hometown. You could imagine the last time you went home, you were nearly killed. You were rejected, you were jeered, you were dishonored, and now he goes back. We don't know why he went back, but it could have been a family reunion. One of his sisters could have been getting married. He'd had to go home. We went home. He wanted to go home. Maybe he just wanted to go and see Mama. All right, that's good. All right, but he goes to his hometown. But there's the context. The next Sabbath, he began teaching in the synagogue. So we know that he didn't just go there for the Sabbath. He didn't just go to preach. He went to go and do something else. But as was his habit, as was his ritual, as was his custom, he would go to synagogue. And he went there, and many heard him were amazed. They asked, "Where did you get this wisdom?" Now, the reason I wanted to use the ESV, and I should have communicated this to the creative team, because it says that they were astonished in the ESV. That word astonished or amazed in the NLT is not wonder. Not like, wow, this guy's amazing. He's my homeboy. This is good. He comes from Nazareth. Woo-hoo. You know, like, have you watched Idols or one of these reality TV programs? And when they're on it, and then they from Vereniging, and then, you know, they become stars. And then when they go back to Vereniging, everybody comes out. They do this ticker tape parade. It's like, woo-hoo, karabo, karabo. I know I'm saying it totally wrong and all of that, but you know what? Okay, so you get that? You remember those things? Okay, it wasn't happening here. They actually didn't want him there. And that word astonish means to kick at, to react, like reactive. It wasn't a welcoming, it was a reactive. Because this is what they said after. They said, where did he get all this wisdom and the power to perform such miracles? Then they scoffed. He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary. And you've got to understand, when in the preach meeting I was saying, one of the commentators actually said that in our colloquial language, what if this had been written, if we were writing it in our colloquial language today, they would be saying, he's a son of a... I said it, and they said, Craig, you're not going to say that on Sunday, are you? I said, I really want to, because I want you to get across the gravity of what was happening here. You see, the Bible doesn't hide anything. When they said he's the son of Mary, what they were saying, he was an illegitimate child. They were saying he's just a son of a... They weren't being nice to Jesus. He said, is he just a worker, a carpenter? Actually that word is tekton. It means builder. So maybe I'm going to dash your kind of Swedish Jesus view of him sandpapering, nice dining room tables and chairs. He was a builder. He was a builder. He was a workman. And that wasn't an elevated position. He was a worker. He was a worker. And then they scoffed, he's just a carpenter, son of Mary, the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, Simon, and his sisters. So he had at least 6 siblings, 7 kids in that home, if not more. And they were deeply offended. Say deeply offended. They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, a prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his relatives and in his own family. Wow. So in that crowd was his family, brothers, sisters, were his relatives, aunties, uncles, whatever they were, the bigger family, and the city. And in every one of those spheres, he was rejected. Every one of those spheres, he was dishonored. Every one of those spheres took great offense upon Jesus. And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles. Couldn't do. Not wouldn't do, couldn't do. How many of you, when you've been offended, you won't do anything? Jesus did not respond to their offense, but he tried, and it says there, except that he to place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. Wow. He couldn't do the miraculous. And what we see here is that offense, I believe, is one of the greatest ways the enemy uses to hinder, stop, distract followers of Jesus Christ obeying, believing, and walking by faith. Last week, I said that, the title of my message was Soft Hearts, Hard Feet. I've changed it because I want tender hearts, tough feet. The Bible doesn't talk about soft hearts. It does. It talks about a tender heart. Just be tender-hearted to one another. Our tender hearts and our tough feet, because we're called to walk by faith. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says that we are to walk by faith and not by sight. We need tough feet. Yes, we need courageous hearts, but we need careful steps. But we've got to have tough feet. And the enemy wants to stop us. You see, when we believe in Jesus and we are born again by the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God comes to dwell in us, and we are born again by the Spirit, there is nothing that can pluck you out of the hand and the family of God. Nothing. You are secure. We are a new creature in Christ Jesus. We are a child of God. All right, He's adopted us. We're redeemed by Him. There we are secure. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. But the enemy hates it when we live a life of honor and an obedience to Jesus. And so he goes all out to get us to be disobedient or distracted, and there's a host of things. But I've seen over the time, one of the greatest ways the enemy uses is offense. in Genesis chapter 4, and it's quite incredible. The first sin was Adam and Eve. They rebelled against God. And I'm sure there was a lot more sin after that. But the next recorded sin was the brothers, was between two brothers, the children of Adam and Eve. And we read about it in Genesis chapter 4. And it says, in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering. Say an. Okay, very important. He brought an offering to the Lord, the fruit of the ground. He was a farmer. And Abel, his brother, also brought, but he brought of the firstborn, say firstborn, of his flock and the fat portions. He didn't just bring the first, he brought the best as well. There's a big difference between an offering and a first fruits and the best part. Yes? So we see what happens. And the Lord said, but for Cain and his offering, I've missed it there. Is it up there? It's not. I better get it right then. Brought the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. That word regard is to look at, to be transfixed at, to gaze at. And so we could say the Lord was looking at Abel's offering, but he had no regard for Cain. In other words, two offerings, one the first and the best. Cain was just an offering. I better bring an offering. And God is looking at Abel's, and he can't. You see, when you see this, is that God can't accept our second. God can't accept Anne. And I thank God that he can't. Not that he won't, he can't. He is God. He can only receive the first. And so he has this, he's transfixed, he's gazed. And of course, Cain is now miffed out. And he's saying, now he's miffed out at God because Abel brought the first. And so God comes to him and he says to him, why are you angry and why is your face fallen? Now, anger and sulking, right? He hasn't sinned yet because we know this. Why? He says, if you do well, in other words, if you bring the first fruits, you will be accepted. My gaze will be upon you. And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. So you see, there is this thing of, we can have a situation, a circumstance, and you can get angry, and you can even have a little bit of a sullen face. I'll never forget my kids when they would be, they would come in, something had happened, and Michelle or Kevin, and they would try to run up the stairs and get away from me, and I'd say, stop. Before you go up that stairs, you change your attitude. Would not let them have that. All right? Sit it out. Let's sort it out. Let's do it now. And so at that point, it's still fine. It's not nice. It's ugly, but God can cope with ugliness. What he can't and won't look at, not for his sake, but for our sake, is he will not look at the second or a third or an offering. He wants the first. And so Cain spoke to his brother Abel. They went into the field, and Cain rose up against his brother and killed him. So he took offense, and it brought forth murder. And then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out from the ground. Now you are cursed from the ground, and has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. The consequences of us taking offense is that the very gift that God has given to us, like Cain, was to farm the land. He says it will no longer yield its fruit. It will be difficult. And the very thing that God gives us to do will become very difficult. And in fact, we end up wandering and going nowhere. God has given each one of us a purpose, and he's called us to fulfill the work to which he has called us. When Jesus in John 17 gets to the end of the time before he goes to the cross, he says, I have completed the work that you have given me. And the enemy doesn't want us to complete the work for God. And one of the greatest ways is offense. To get angry. Be offended. You see, an offended heart is a heart that is caged. And Jesus is in this situation, and I want to tell you that, let me stick to my notes, and hopefully I'll then finish. How much time have I got left? Not much. Okay. The result of this family, relatives, and city taking offense was that the power of God was blocked. Was that there was no miracle, there was very few miracles that could take place. Jesus couldn't. And that word offense is that they became deeply offended is the Greek word scandalizo, which is the little stick. You know, I don't know if you ever did it in your childhood. I know that the millennials don't know what we're talking about, but maybe us older generation, when we would go out and we made this like bird cage and we stuck it on a stick with a little string, and we went and hid behind the bush and we waited and put bird seed out. That's what we used to do. We used to want to catch the birds. And so we'd put bird seed out, make this like cage, and we'd wait. And when the birds would fly in, they would pull that little stick out, the cage would fall down and they would be trapped. That little stick is scandalizo, offense. And the enemy has got a cage and he's waiting. And he's waiting. And he's waiting for us to fly into that trap. And he wants to pull that little stick and he wants to cage our hearts. Because once we are caged, we are trapped. What happens is that a caged heart, and in that leads to unbelief. Let me say this. In that story, I look at there's like three hearts. Traveled a lot into Brazil, and I love coffee. And one of the famous brands of coffee in Brazil is Três Coração. If there's any Portuguese-speaking people in this congregation, please excuse the pronunciation. But it means three hearts coffee. Três Coração coffee. Café. Três Coração Cafe. There's three hearts. And when I look at the story, there's three hearts here. There's this tender-hearted Jesus. Even in the face of rejection, even in the face that he could actually be killed, be thrown off the cliff, even into the midst the rejection, the hurt and the pain, even to a family, to a community that just like him, he walks into their world. And oh, I am so grateful, because I know that when I look at a situation that's a little, they've rejected me, they've hurt me, they've not doing, I don't actually want to go there. I want to go the other side of the street. Don't know about you. You walk into the shopping center and you had somebody that's angry with you. You're going to like, whoo, I'm going to need milk now. But Jesus, this tender-hearted, compassionate God-man, walks straight into rejection, walks straight into offense. He walks straight into this place. And he ministers, and he's so gracious, tender-hearted. I say, oh God, I want to be like you. I want to be like you, Jesus, that even in the face of pain and rejection and hurt, I will still walk in, and I'll walk out with a tender heart, not a caged one. But he walks into this community that is caged, it's offended. They've rejected him months before, and they are reactive, and they want to, and so there's this fight going on, and there's this caged heart, and he oh so tenderly tries, but they reject him again. These caged hearts. But then there's tough hearts. Or hard-hearted people. And you don't really hear about them other than the disciples followed him. Now we know that the disciples had hard hearts. Yes, remember last week. Now, okay, I know that we've got the advantage because in Mark chapter 6, verse 52, it says there, okay? So I know it's Peter looking back, but he says in 6:52, he says, where am I? There we go. For they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. So these were the disciples. They had hardened hearts. Their hearts were tough. And I started to think about this, and I said, Lord, what's going on here? And I felt God saying to me, tough hearts sit on the fence. Hard hearts sit on the fence. They're not reactive or responsive. They're just sitting in the middle. They're not cold nor hot. They're just lukewarm. And I went, oh. You see, they follow Jesus, and we can follow Jesus, but we're not responsive and we're not reactive, and we just sit in the middle. And I wonder for us here this morning, I'm sure there is many here that find themselves in somewhere in that, or maybe all three. Maybe you're tender-hearted. Maybe you're caged. You're sitting on. You're caged in an offense. You've taken great offense against something, someone, the church, government, community, boss, whatever it may be. Maybe you're about to, and this today is a warning to say, please be careful. Sin wants to rule over you, wants to put you in a cage, wants to make you reactive. And the only way out of that cage is repentance and forgiveness. It's like, God, I'm sorry. And I'm not just sorry, but I repent and I forgive that person, that situation, that circumstance, whatever it is, and I walk out. But I wonder that if not a lot of us find ourselves on the fence. Oh, we come to church and we're there and we've like disciples, but we're not responsive like Jesus. We're sitting on the fence, and I believe that God is calling us to get off the fence and begin to become tender-hearted. And so my question is, how do I grow a tender heart? And I think that there's many ways, but what I am captivated by this story is the fact that Jesus says a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown amongst his relatives and his family. Not without honor. He says, everywhere else the crowds honor me. Everywhere else the crowds run in. But when I come home, I'm rejected. I'm dishonored. And I want to say, friends, I believe that there is a key here. And it's something that we tapped into years ago. And I believe that God is wanting to encourage us and remind us, for those of us who have been around for years, but those of us who have just come and are beginning to be part of, I want to say that Urban Life is a household of honor. We want to be a place, a household of honor. How many of you would really love to see more of the power of God manifest here on a Sunday meeting, where the miracles of God are just, there's power, demons are going, people are being healed? How many of you would love this house, Urban Life, to have influence, growing, seeing people saved? You bring your relatives, you bring your fans, your family, your colleague. When they walk into this place, the power of God is so here that they are healed, they accept Christ. How many of you would like to be a part of a household like that? Let's be real. Now, I don't believe there's no one of us here that doesn't want that. And do we realize, though, that you and I can make that happen? Because here's the deal. If offended, caged hearts, hardened hearts can stop the power of God, then tender hearts can bring the power of God. Yeah? The problem is not on God's side. The problem is on here. You see, honor unplugs the power of God. Dishonor unplugs the power of God. Yesterday at the She Speaks, Andy phoned me. She says, Craig, you better start praying. There's no electricity here on the front. There's no projectors, nothing. Everything was going to shut down unless we got power. And we had the electrician out, and there was a short. Don't know what, the devil sends some demon or whatever and makes a short or whatever. I don't know. But unplug, no power. Plug in, power. And I went home and I felt God saying to me, Craig, it is just as simple as that. Is that if we continue to build a household of honor, the power of God would grow here. And that's got to do with you and me. It can't just be the leaders, and it can't just be the community pastors, and it can't just be our small group leaders. It's got to be everyone. It's got to be you and me giving ourselves to honor and honoring and building a culture of honor, that this would be a household of honor. If we dishonor, we're going to unplug the power of God. When we honor, we open the floodgates and power comes. That's what I see. It didn't say Jesus wouldn't do the miracles. He couldn't do a miracle. And therefore, I want this place to be a household of honor. I believe it is. We are growing. It's something that has captured my heart a number of years ago, probably around about 2010, if I can remember the right. And we do everything that we can to bring honor, because honor is in thought, word, and deed. You see, the word honor is the Greek word time, or T-I-M-E. I think it's pronounced timi. Spelled time. It's an amazing thing. But it's at the essence of its meaning is value. Honor is this: what you put first, you honor. What you put first, you honor. Where you put value first is what you honor. Wow. What you put first, you honor. You can tweet that. Instagram it. My story it. Sarah. You see, when we go back to Cain and Abel, Abel honored God because he brought the firstborn. He put value on God, and he says, God is a God who is first. He can only accept first. Therefore, I value what God values. Therefore, I will bring the first. And he honored God, and God's gaze and his presence was upon him. Abel just brought an offering. Do you know that you can bring an offering and it not count for anything? Did you realize that? When I saw that in the scriptures, when I began to understand the revelation, I ran to our accountant, our bookkeeper, and I said to her, before you pay me, before it even hits my bank account, now I know I can do this, maybe you can't, but I said, before my money even gets to my bank account, you better take my tithe off. Because I want it to be the first thing I pay, because I want to put God first. And I know for many of you, you're the same. Because I get the text messages, 25th, 26th, boy, they just come flying in. And every time, over this weekend, yesterday, today, they're just flying in. People are tithing. And I go, God, the people are honoring you. They're honoring you. Look here, Lord, they're honoring you. They're putting you first. The first thing they're paying. The first thing that you don't pay a tithe. The first thing that they're bringing, Lord, they're honoring you. They're honoring you. They're honoring you. Wow. The first part of our day, when we talk about a devotion time, it's not, they call it a quiet time or whatever. Let me tell you, friends, we can do it, and I know that I can get there. I can get to go and do my devotional time so that I can do it and not be it. That I want to just go and sit with God and saying, I'm honoring you, Lord. The first thing I'm doing in my day, I'm just going to be with you. Putting you first. When it comes to the first part of our week, as we come and be part of this gathering of saints, the household of God here on earth, the church of Jesus Christ, the bride of Christ, to be together with the saints, man, we're honoring God. If you're not a follower of Christ, you're off the hook. But as a follower of Jesus Christ, a Christian, come on. It's when we gather together like this that we've come to honor God first. Oh, do we receive from the worship? Oh, I love it. And do we get word? And yeah, it's all of that. Those are the benefits. But the first and foremost thing is we've come to seek the Lord first. And then He'll add these other things to us. But we've come to honor God. How many of you have that person in your life, or a colleague, a family member, somebody that is, you make a date with them or you make a meeting with them and they're always late? You know, okay, you're getting it. Like that colleague, always 10 minutes, 15 minutes late, whatever it is. Always late. Or you make a thing. I'm not talking about the time when somebody has a puncture or the traffic is just stalled up. And we live in a busy city. We know that. All right? I'm not talking about those one-off times. But they're always late. You know them. You're like, where's so-and-so? No, they're late. I want to ask you this question. How do you feel when you're sitting in the restaurant and they're late? Or you're waiting in the office and they're late? How do you feel? Come on. Give me some emotion. Disrespected? Awkward? Do you get offended? All right, brilliant. Irritated? How many of you feel valued by them not coming on time? Anybody? You feel valued that they don't come on time? They're like they love you. How many of you feel valued when they are already there in the meeting and you arrive? How's that? Now, I've got a friend, his name Rory Dyer, and he's always early to a meeting. It's one of the things. I know that if I'm meeting with Rory, I'm always early. Why? Because I know what he values, and so I value that. I'm not really late to meetings, but I've learned again. I'm going, you know what? I tend to drift, don't I? Don't you drift? This is like, am I putting value on others? We had a dinner date with Rory and Mel this week, Andy and I. And I looked at my watch, Pretoria, I've got to go. And I thought, I'm going to get there. And we got there early, and I thought, I'm sure that Rory's going to be there. But he was running a bit late, so he stopped, not late to the time. He stops, he lets Mel jump out. He goes and parks the car because Mel was on time. And I'm going, you see, he honored us. He valued us. I value that. Isn't that true? Don't you feel honored? I wonder how God feels when we come late to worship Him. I wonder. This is a tough message. But I believe a tough message will bring about tender hearts. A tender message sometimes just produces tough hearts. But now, you see, I'm starting as a household because I believe that we are dishonoring God. And when we dishonor God, we block the miraculous and the power and the influence. It could be a little thing. And right now there's some people going, you see, if you're reacting right now, the chances are your heart is caged. If there's like, whatever, you're on the fence. But if you're going, oh God, I need to make a change. Please, I'm going to adjust from here. Your heart is tender. And I've wanted to do this, and I've said, Lord, I'm waiting for the time, but this is the time. Because I want tender-hearted, tough feet. People that would see the miraculous power of God. And you know what? The chances are people are going to leave because of this. And I never want that, and I don't want that. But what I want more is I want to honor God. When a worship team comes early and hours and people and pastors and all of that come to serve and to be here. And you know what they said to me in Ignite? They said somebody brought their child to register them after 10 o'clock. That's over an hour late. They said, Craig, what do I do? I said, send them away. He said, He said, they're dishonoring you. I believe this. I believe that if we do this, if we as a people of God do a small thing out of our hearts, not just our things, because, you know, God comes to the prophet Isaiah and he says, these people, they honor me with their words, but their hearts are far from them. Do you know that you can say something and not really mean it? You could go, oh, you know what, you honorable. You know I could say something to Andy, but when she knows if I valued her. And the reality is when I put myself first, I devalue her. And it's tough, and I don't like it, and I don't want it, and I don't want to do that, and I hate myself for it. But I want to be a people that what I put first, I value. And I want to say, God, I want to put you first, and I want to put you first in my life and every decision I make. I want to put you first in my day. I want to put you first in my week. I want to put you first in my month. I want to put you first in my marriage. I want to put you first in my money. I want to put you first. I want to give you the first. I want to value you. I want to value what you value. I want to value other people's time. I want to be on time. I want to value your time, oh God. When people have set aside a time, I want to come and I want to be with God's people. Hearts prepared, full of faith. I want tender hearts and tough feet. It's going to make some time, but I want to honor you, God. And I want Urban Life to be a household of honor. I don't want to be like Nazareth. Do you? Do you want us to be like Nazareth? That Jesus comes to and says, I wasn't honored. Say, no, Lord. No, Lord. See, God felt dishonored by the people in Malachi. He said, you're dishonoring me. In Malachi, the Jewish people have said, what do you mean? He said, you're dishonoring me in the tithes and offerings. You're not bringing me your first. I wrote this down. I said, if we do this for the next 6 weeks, and I thought, you know what? I'm scared to, but by faith, I'm saying this. That if we, over the next 6 weeks, because not everyone is in church this morning, but over the next 6 weeks, we make every effort to honor God in our time, and that we are all here 10 to, having booked our kids in. Don't arrive here at 9, because you're going to take 10 minutes to book your kids in. Get your kids here at 1:45 so that they can be booked in, so that the kids, and you teach your kids honor. I believe that if we did this over the next 6 weeks, we could have a gauge. And if after 6 weeks there's nothing that has happened, then you can go back to your old ways. How about it? How about we do this? How about we try this? Over the next 6 weeks, we on time, before time. We come with hearts ready to honor. How about we put God first in our day, put first God in our week, in our money. Let's start valuing what God values. Let's start doing that as a people every day, all day. Come on, I know we're going to fail, but hey, I'm dreaming. Could you imagine if a whole city said, come Jesus, I believe revival would break out. And you know what? We got to go, oh, we should pray more, and we should. Oh, we should study more, and we should. But I wonder if we just honored God more in our time, if the miracles and the power of God would not just break out. And I believe that the presence of God will be greater, the provision of God will be more, and the power of God will be evident. Miracles and influence will overtake us.